the microphone screeched as his ex-girlfriend took the stage at our wedding, her red lips curling into a smile as she said, "I have some stories about the groom that his bride might want to hear." The microphone screeched as Jessica took the stage at our wedding, her red lips curling into a smile. My stomach dropped when Tom, my to-be husband, squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't be dramatic about this." Those words felt like ice running down my spine. The same words he used every time I questioned why his ex-girlfriend kept showing up in our lives. I sat frozen in my white dress watching her gracefully climb the 3 steps to the stage. The crystal chandelier light caught her emerald green dress, making her shine like she was meant to be the star of my wedding day. 300 pairs of eyes followed her movement, and the room fell into complete silence. My mother-in-law beamed from the front row. Obviously proud of arranging this special surprise, the champagne in my glass trembled as my hand shook. Just this morning, I had been the happiest bride, surrounded by floating white flowers and twinkling lights, now watching Jessica adjust the microphone. I felt like I was watching a slow-motion car crash. I knew what was coming, but I couldn't move or stop it. I've known Tom for 15 years. Jessica started her voice smooth like honey. The crowd settled in, eager to hear her speech. I noticed my bridesmaids exchanging worried glances. They knew the whole story, how Jessica had never really left our lives. How she always found ways to remind me she knew Tom better than I ever would. Tom's grip on my hand tightened when I tried to pull away on the surface. He looked calm, even pleased, but I felt his palms sweating against mine. The same nervous sweat I'd felt 6 months ago when I found her lipstick on his collar, and he claimed it was from an innocent goodbye. Hug at a business meeting. Jessica's voice carried across the reception hall as she shared story after story about her time with Tom. Each tale felt like a small needle pushing into my heart. She talked about their college adventures, family holidays together, and inside jokes that made Tom chuckle beside me, with each laugh from my new husband. I felt smaller and smaller in my expensive wedding dress. I looked around the room, seeing different reactions play across faces. Tom's college. Friends were grinning clearly, remembering the times Jessica talked about my family, sat stiff and uncomfortable. Especially my sister, who had warned me about Tom's lingering attachment to his ex. The wedding planner stood in the corner, confusion clear on her face. This speech wasn't on the schedule I had carefully crafted over 6 months. My mind drifted to the day Tom proposed. It had been perfect. A surprise trip to Paris, dinner at the Eiffel Tower, and a beautiful speech about our future together. That same night, Jessica had posted an old photo of her and Tom at that exact spot, dated 3 years ago, when I pointed this out. Tom said I was being paranoid. "She's just reminiscing," he'd said. "Stop being dramatic." The room suddenly felt too hot. Jessica's voice faded into background noise as I remembered all the coincidences leading up to this moment, how she always appeared at our favorite restaurants, how she got hired at Tom's company 3 months ago, how she helped him pick out my engagement ring, because she knew his taste, and now Jessica's voice cut through my thoughts. I have a special video to share. The lights dimmed and my heart stopped on the large screen behind her. Images started to play Tom and Jessica at a cafe 2 weeks ago, their hands touching across the table. His familiar, loving smile, the one he claimed was only for me directed. At her, Tom's. Hand left mine. I heard him curse under his breath. The whisper started. I could hear the questions. The gossip beginning my perfect wedding was turning into a nightmare in front of hundreds of witnesses. My sister stood up from her table, ready to cause a scene. But I solely shook my head. This moment didn't need more drama. The final photo appeared on the screen. Tom and Jessica locked in an embrace, dated just yesterday during his bachelor party. The party he said was just golf with his friends. In the photo, my engagement rings. Twins sparkled on her finger. I finally understood every time he called me dramatic. Every time he dismissed my concerns, he was covering his tracks. The woman giving a speech at my wedding wasn't just an ex-girlfriend, she was a current girlfriend. And I was the fool who had spent a year planning this wedding, thinking love could conquer our problems without a word. I stood up. Up. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound cutting through Jessica's speech. Tom reached for my arm, but I moved away. "Don't be dramatic," he started to say. But this time, those words had lost their power over me. I walked out of my own wedding reception, head held high, leaving behind the man who had made me doubt my own sanity for the past year. The sound of Jessica's voice faded as the reception hall doors closed behind me in the quiet hallway. Surrounded by the scent of roses and broken promises, I finally let myself smile. Sometimes the biggest gift comes wrapped in heartbreak. I met Tom on an ordinary Wednesday at Murphy's coffee shop, where I worked every morning before my teaching job at the elementary school. He walked in wearing an expensive suit that stood out among the usual crowd of college students and local workers. His coffee order was ridiculously specific. An extra hot tripe shot, almond milk latte with sugar-free vanilla and a dash of cinnamon while making his drink. I misspelled his name as Tom on the cup, instead of getting annoyed like most customers would. He laughed and said it made him feel fant. That laugh made something flutter in my chest. He came back every morning after that, always at 7:15 a.m., always with a new conversation starter. One morning, he admitted, he lived across town and had been driving 30 minutes out of his way just to get coffee from me when I asked why he didn't go to the coffee shops near his office. He simply said, "They don't have you." It was cheesy, but it worked. That evening, we had our first date. Tom never hid his wealthy background, but he didn't flaunt it either. On our third date, he picked me up in his Mercedes, but apologized for it, saying his regular car was in the shop. I later learned he owned 4 cars, and the Mercedes was his regular one. Meanwhile, I took the bus to work and shared a small apartment with 2 roommates. Our different backgrounds showed in small ways when I got excited about finding a dress on sale for $50. He surprised me the next day with 5 designer dresses worth more than my monthly rent. When I packed homemade sandwiches for our beach date, he seemed confused, having never had a picnic that wasn't catered. But these differences made us interesting to each other. He taught me about wine tasting. I showed him the joy of building blanket forts on rainy Sundays. His mother, Eleanor, wasn't as charmed by our differences. The first time I visited their family home, she took one look at my modest clothes and asked Tom if he was going through a rebellious phase. Tom defended me, but I saw the worry in his eyes that night. He explained that his family had expectations. I promised to try harder to fit in. For 6 months, everything felt perfect. Tom introduced me to his world of charity galas and golf clubs, while I helped him discover the simple pleasures of farmers' markets and community festivals. His friends welcomed me, though they sometimes made jokes about Tom slumming it. I pretended those comments didn't hurt. The first crack in our perfect story appeared at his company's party. I overheard 2 women talking in the bathroom. "Did you hear about Tom and Jessica?" One whispered, 15 years together. Then he suddenly starts dating a coffee shop girl. "Eleanor is beside herself," the other woman replied. "Don't worry, these phases never last. Jessica's still in the picture anyway." When I asked Tom about Jessica that night, he said she was just an old friend from high school. "We dated for a while, but it's ancient history," he explained, kissing my forehead. "You're being dramatic, sweetheart. Let's not ruin a perfect night." I believed him because I wanted to, because his kisses made my doubts melt away. Looking back, I should have noticed how he never deleted their photos from his social media, how he kept a small box of her letters in his desk drawer, claiming they were too important to throw away, how he always answered her calls, no matter where we were or what we were doing. But love makes you blind, especially when you're afraid of losing something that feels too good to be true. Tom represented everything I'd worked for, a chance at a better life. Proof that my mother was wrong when she said I'd never amount to anything. When you grow up being told, You don't deserve good things. You learn to ignore red flags, mistaking them for normal relationship bumps. Our first big fight happened when I found an expensive bracelet in his car. It wasn't wrapped, and it wasn't my birthday or any special occasion. When I asked about it, he got defensive. It's for my mother. He snapped. 2 days later, I saw Jessica wearing it in a photo she posted. Tom said she must have bought the same one. I chose to believe him. By then, I had fallen deeply in love with the man who brought me coffee in bed every Sunday morning. The man who listened to my dreams of opening my own bookstore someday and didn't laugh. The man who held me when I cried about my students' failing home life, who understood why I spent my own money buying that student new shoes. What I didn't realize was that I was falling in love with only one version of Tom, the one he showed me like a moon with a dark side. There was more to him that I couldn't see, but by the time I started noticing the shadows, I was already too invested, too tangled in the life we were building. Together on our 1-year anniversary, Tom took me back to Murphy's coffee shop as we sat in the same spot where he first made me laugh. He promised that our different backgrounds didn't matter, that love was enough. I believed him because his words felt like everything I'd ever wanted to hear that night under the coffee shops. Flickering lights, I thought I had finally found my fairy tale ending. I didn't know. Then that fairy tales often have wolves hiding in plain sight. Everything changed one spring morning when Tom asked me to meet him for lunch at his office. I'd never been there before. He always said the corporate environment was boring when I stepped out of the elevator onto the 40th floor. The first person I saw was Jessica. She sat at the reception desk, her perfectly manicured fingers typing away at the keyboard. She looked exactly like the woman from the photos. I'd seen long, blonde hair, bright, blue eyes, and the kind of natural beauty that made other women feel invisible when our eyes met. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You must be Tom's friend," she said, emphasizing the last word, like it was temporary. "I'm Jessica, his new executive assistant." My stomach churned out of all the companies in the city she'd ended up here. Thomas appeared before I could respond, kissing my cheek and acting like this was the most normal thing in the world. During lunch, I barely touched my food, watching him explain how Jessica got the job. "Her qualifications are perfect," he said. "And you know how hard it is to find good help these days." That night, I searched through their old photos online. They looked perfect together, both from wealthy families, both educated at private schools, both used to a life of luxury in every picture they wore, matching designer clothes and bright smileys. The comments under each photo told a story. Power couple match made in heaven. When's the wedding? The next few months became a dance of casual run-ins and coincidences. Jessica joined Tom's department meetings, meeting late nights at the office. She coordinated his schedule, which somehow always included lunch meetings. When I had planned to visit, she even joined his weekend golf games, wearing cute, sporty outfits that made my simple sundresses feel childish. Tom insisted I was imagining things. "She's just good at her job," he'd say, rubbing my shoulders. "Besides, that relationship ended years ago. We're just friends now." But I noticed how he laughed harder at her jokes, how his eyes followed her across rooms, how he kept mentioning random memories they shared. My friends started noticing too. Sarah, my best friend since college, pointed out how Jessica always seemed to post photos from restaurants right before Tom suggested we try them. "It's like she's marking her territory," Sarah said. When I mentioned this to Tom, he called me paranoid. "You're turning into one of those crazy, jealous girlfriends." He warned the real turning point came during Tom's birthday dinner. I'd spent weeks planning a surprise party at his favorite restaurant. Jessica showed up uninvited, carrying a small blue box from Tiffany's. Inside was a vintage watch that matched one she wore, apparently bought during their trip to Switzerland. Years ago, Tom's face lit up in a way I'd never seen before. My gift, a handmade photo album documenting our relationship, sat unopened on the table later that night. When I found them huddled together, looking at old photos on her phone, Tom said they were just reminiscing. "Don't make a scene," he whispered when I tried to pull him away. "You're embarrassing me." Jessica's presence grew stronger each day. She started showing up at our favorite coffee shop. My coffee shop, ordering the same complex drink I made for Tom when we first met. She joined his family dinners, sitting in what used to be my spot next to Eleanor. His mother would beam at her, making comments about people who know our ways. Even our mutual friends started acting differently. They'd catch themselves before telling stories about Tom and me, checking if Jessica was within earshot at group events. There was always an awkward shuffle when she arrived, like everyone knew something. I didn't one evening. I overheard Tom on the phone with her. "Of course, I remember Paris," he laughed. "How could I forget where we first?" He saw me standing in the doorway and quickly hung up. When I asked about the call, he said they were discussing a business trip the next day. Jessica posted a throwback photo from their time in Paris, captioned, "Some memories never fade." I started doubting everything, every late meeting, every business dinner, every weekend. Golf game became suspicious. Was I really being dramatic, as Tom claimed? Was I destroying our relationship with unfounded jealousy? Jessica played her part perfectly, always professional, always friendly, but with tiny jabs hidden in sweet words. "Oh, Tom always had a thing for simple girls," she told me once, examining my unmanicured nails. "It's so refreshing. Don't you think, like a palate cleanser?" Her words were wrapped in a smile, but they cut deep. Each interaction left me feeling smaller, less worthy of the world I was trying to fit into. The worst part was how everyone else seemed to see it differently to them. Jessica was just being helpful, friendly, even, "She's making an effort to welcome you." Eleanor would say most women would be threatened by their fiancé's ex, but not Jessica. "She's so mature about it all." But I saw the truth in small moments, the way she touched Tom's arm, when laughing at his jokes, how she'd bring up memories that excluded me. The subtle ways she reminded everyone that she knew him, first knew him better. Each day I felt more like an understudy in my own relationship. Watchin' the Rayal star, wait in the wings. As our wedding day approached, Jessica's role in our lives only grew. She offered to help with planning, showing up at every vendor meeting with suggestions that reminded everyone of her history with Tom. "Remember how we always talked about having the ceremony at sunset," she'd say, and Tom's eyes would get that distant look lost in memories that didn't include me. The proposal happened exactly as Tom planned. A perfect performance for his perfect life. He rented out the entire rooftop restaurant, covered it with roses, and hired a string quartet. When he got down on 1kn, the city lights twinkled behind him like stars. The ring was massive. A family heirloom that Eleanor had mysteriously decided I was worthy of receiving. What Tom didn't know was that I had seen the text message from Jessica the night before. "The ring looks even more beautiful than when we picked it out together. She'll never know, it's not the original family ring." I pretended not to see how the jeweler's receipt in Tom's desk showed two identical rings purchased on the same day. Wedding planning started immediately. Eleanor hired the city's most expensive planner, insisting that a Davidson wedding had to meet certain standards. I sat through meetings about flower arrangements and table settings, watching my simple dreams of a garden ceremony transform into an extravagant hotel ballroom affair. For 300 guests, Jessica, of course, became an unofficial wedding planner. She had connections with all the best vendors. She knew exactly which wines Tom's family preferred. She even suggested the same cake flavor from some party she and Tom had hosted years ago. Every decision became a reminder of their history. Wrapped in the guise of helpful suggestions, the guest list became a battlefield. Eleanor insisted on inviting hundreds of family friends I'd never met. When I suggested inviting my childhood friend who worked as a waitress, Eleanor's lips tightened. "Dear, We have to maintain a certain atmosphere, she said. Tom squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "Just let her handle it." My dress appointment turned into another Jessica show. She showed up uninvited with Eleanor carrying photos of dresses she'd once considered for her wedding with Tom. As I tried on gowns, they huddled together, whispering and giggling. I chose a simple, elegant dress that made me feel beautiful the next day. Eleanor arrived with a completely different dress, a massive beaded ball gown that Jessica had picked out. Tom always dreamed of his bride in something like this, Eleanor said, her voice leaving no room for argument. When I looked in the mirror wearing that heavy dress, I barely recognized myself, but Tom K's face lit up when he saw the photos. "You look just like a real Davidson bride," he said proudly. The engagement party was the first red flag I couldn't ignore. Jessica gave a speech about her dear friends Tom and me, but every story she told was about her time with Tom. She ended with a tearful toast about letting go of first loves for the greater good. The crowd ate it up, praising her grace and mature. I spent the entire night feeling like a consolation prize. One evening, I found Tom and Jessica in his home office, hunched over seating arrangements. Her hand rested on his shoulder as they laughed about some shared memory when they saw me. They jumped apart like guilty teenagers. "We just making sure everyone's comfortable." Tom explained the seating chart had me at a different table from him during dinner. Wedding dress fittings became weekly reminders of my inadequacy each time the dress needed to be taken in. More stress is normal for brides, the seamstress said kindly, but I knew it was more than that. I was disappearing, becoming smaller and smaller under the weight of expectations and unspoken comparisons. The bachelor party location changed 3 times. First, it was a golf weekend in Florida, then a skiing trip to Colorado. Finally, a last-minute change to a beach resort, the same one where Jessica happened to be having a girls' weekend. Tom swore it was coincidence. I found sand in his shoes and a lipstick stain on his collar. When he returned, our engagement photos turned into a production. Eleanor hired a famous photographer who had shot for magazines during the session. He kept positioning me to look more like the photo of Tom and Jessica from that charity gala. By the end, I felt like an actress playing a role in someone else's love story. The wedding rehearsal dinner became a slideshow of Tom's life, mostly featuring Jessica. We couldn't leave out such important memories. Eleanor explained when I questioned the number of photos with his ex. T. Tom's college friends made jokes about the one that got away, not realizing or not caring that I was within earshot. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found an envelope in Tom's briefcase. Inside were 2 plane tickets to Paris, dated for our honeymoon week. One was in Tom's name, the other in Jessica's. When I confronted him, he claimed they were old tickets he'd forgotten to throw away. The booking date was from last week. My wedding vows sat unfinished on my laptop. While Tom spent late nights at the office reviewing contracts, Jessica's Instagram showed them at dinner meetings, her hand always somehow touching his arm or shoulder in every photo she wore. The emerald necklace I once admired in a shop window, the one Tom said was too expensive when I pointed it out. The rehearsal dinner turned into a parade of memories I wasn't part of. Everyone had a story about Tom and Jessica, their epic college romance, their family vacations together, their shared dreams with each story. I felt more like an intruder in my own engagement. Tom barely noticed my silence, too busy laughing at Jessica's perfectly timed jokes the night before our wedding. I sat alone in our apartment, staring at my phone. Jessica had posted another throwback photo this time, of her and Tom at their high school prom. The caption read some love stories never really end. Tom had liked the post, within seconds of it going up. I called my best friend Sarah, crying about all the signs I'd ignored. She listened patiently, then asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I thought about the money spent the guests flying. In the expectations weighing on my shoulders, I have to. I whispered, not recognizing my own voice that night. I dreamed of standing at the altar watching Tom say his vows to Jessica while I stood in the crowd invisible, in my massive princess dress. I woke up gasping for air, realizing that maybe this wasn't the fairy tale I thought it was, but by then it felt too late to turn back the next morning. I would put on that heavy dress and walk down the aisle, pretending not to see the way. Tom's eyes drifted to the seat where Jessica would be sitting. Little did I know Jessica had plans of her own for our wedding day, the week before our wedding. Everything started unraveling faster than I could tie it back together. Looking back, the signs were as bright as NE on lights, but I'd gotten so good at closing my eyes, it all started with a phone call. I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd forgotten my phone charger at Tom's office and went back after hours using the key he'd given me. The elevator doors opened to a dimly lit floor, and I heard his laugh. That special laugh I thought was just for me. He was in his office with Jessica, drinking wine, and sitting way too close on the leather couch. Remember when we used to do this every night? Jessica's voice carried through the crack in the door. God, I miss those days. Tom's response made my heart stop. We could always— Oh, never mind. I can't think like that anymore. There was a long pause, the kind that usually leads to something you can't take back. I dropped my keys, the sound making them jump apart. Tom's excuses came quickly. Late meeting, urgent paperwork. Jessica just happened to stay to help, but I saw the wine glasses, the takeout containers, the way Jessica's lipstick was slightly smudged that night. I sat in my car for hours reading through old text messages between Tom and me, each working late message matched with Jessica's social media posts from his office the next day. Sarah dragged me to coffee and forced me to talk. She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots she'd been collecting. Evidence she'd been afraid to share photos of Tom and Jessica at restaurants. On nights he told me he was with clients, check-ins at hotels during his business trips, comments and likes exchanged at 3 a.m. when he claimed to be sleeping. There's more, Sarah said gently. Remember when he said he was visiting his sick uncle in Chicago? She showed me a photo of Tom and Jessica at a beach resort in Miami. His arm around her waist. The date stamp matched exactly. His uncle died 3 years ago, Sarah added quietly. I looked it up. I spent that night going through my own photos, seeing what I'd refused to see before in group pictures. Tom always somehow ended up next to Jessica at parties. His body would be angled toward her even when he was talking to someone else. There were the matching coffee cups in their morning office selfies, the inside jokes in their comments, the way they used the same phrases like they shared a private language. The wedding gifts started arriving, and with them came more. Revelations, a beautiful silver photo frame from Jessica held a note for memories past and future. Tom's face lit up when he saw it touching the engraving with familiar fondness. Later, I found the receipt. It was from a jewelry store, not a home goods store. The same jewelry store where a matching men's watch had been purchased. On the same day, my wedding dress hung in our spare room, like a white ghost, mocking me. During the final fitting, I discovered a small blue ribbon sewn into the hem, something blue. The seamstress said cheerfully. Miss Jessica dropped it off. She said it was from her grandmother's wedding dress. Such a thoughtful friend. Tom had told me his mother was providing the something blue. The wedding planner's assistant slipped up during our final meeting, just like Miss Jessica wanted. She said, while describing the flower arrangements when I asked what she meant. She turned pale and excused herself. Later, I found emails between Jessica and the planner, dozens of them making changes to my choices. Tom's credit card had paid for all of them. My bachelorette party turned into another reminder. The private room at the restaurant was decorated with photos of the bride and groom, except half of them were old photos of Tom and Jessica. "Oh my God, who did this?" my maid of honor exclaimed, rushing to take them down. I recognized the handwriting on the back of each photo, the same handwriting that had been appearing on sweet notes left on Tom's desk 3 days before the wedding. I broke down and checked Tom's phone while he was showering. His password was still their anniversary. I'd seen him enter it once and pretended not to notice their text messages went back months filled with, "I miss you," and if things were different, plans made and secrets kept. Heart emojis and midnight confessions. The most recent message was from that morning: "Can't wait to see you in that green dress, the same green dress I'd watched her buy," claiming it was for a different wedding. I'd stood right there in the boutique, playing the role of the supportive friend, while she modeled it for Tom Mother Green, always was his favorite color. Eleanor had said, giving me a look that finally made sense that night. Tom got a delivery at our door, a package he quickly hid in his office when he left to pick up dinner. I found it a small velvet box containing a delicate bracelet. The engraving inside read, "To my forever love." The receipt showed a matching necklace delivered to a different address. Jessica wore it in her Instagram story the next day. 2 days before the wedding, I overheard Tom on the phone in our bathroom. "Everything's arranged. I know it's crazy. We'll figure it out after, I promise." When he came out, he said it was a work call. His cologne smelled like Jessica's signature perfume, the one she'd worn at the office party last night, the party he said he couldn't attend the night before wedding. My mother tried to talk to me. She never liked Tom claiming he looked at me the way someone looks at a temporary thing. "I've seen men like him before." She said they keep their past alive because they never plan to let it go. I wished I'd listened when she first said it. Back when my heart wasn't so tangled in his lies. Our wedding rehearsal dinner became a parade of moments. I couldn't unsee the way Tom pulled out Jessica's chair before remembering to help me, how his hand lingered on her back during photos, the inside jokes in his best man speech that made them both laugh while I sat there feeling like an outsider at my own celebration. That final night, I lay awake in my old bedroom, my wedding dress hanging by the window. Tomorrow, I would walk down the aisle toward a man who had spent our entire relationship walking back toward someone else. I touched my engagement ring, the copy of another ring, given to another woman, probably worn on another hand at that very moment. The worst part wasn't the lies or the betrayal. It was realizing that every time I doubted myself, every time I'd felt crazy or paranoid, I'd actually been seeing the truth. I just hadn't been ready to believe it. Standing in the empty hallway outside the reception, I heard the muffled sound of gasps and whispers through the heavy doors. Jessica's speech was probably reaching its crescendo, revealing every moment she'd stolen with my almost husband. My phone buzzed continuously, Tom's messages, no doubt begging me not to make a scene. I walked to the bridal suite, my heels clicking against the marble floor inside. My reflections stared back at me from a dozen angles in the ornate mirrors. The dress I'd never wanted suddenly felt like armor. I started laughing, a real deep laugh that brought tears to my eyes. All this time, I'd been the other woman in my own relationship. Sarah burst into the room, her bridesmaid dress rustling the video. She said, breathless, "There's more than just yesterday's footage. She has clips from their entire relationship, including last week at his beach house." He paused, watching my reaction. The one he said was being renovated. I sat down at the vanity, surprisingly calm. "You know what's funny? I actually packed his bag for that trip." He said, "It was a business conference in Seattle." I started removing my veil pin by pin. I even wrote him a little note and hid it in his suit pocket. I wonder if he found it while he was with her. The door opened again. Eleanor stood there. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide her fury. "What do you think you're doing? Get back out there right now. We have 300 guests waiting. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Whatever Jessica's doing, we can fix this. The Davidson family doesn't have scandals. I turned to face her, suddenly understanding everything. You knew all this time. You knew it wasn't a question. That's why you pushed for such a big wedding. You thought if you threw enough money and people at it, your son would finally pick the right society girl over the coffee shop. Nobody. Eleanor's face hardened. Tom and Jessica have history, they grew up together, they understand each other. You were just... She waved her hand dismissively. A phase, a rebellion. But he's ready to come home now, home. I repeated the word, tasting bitter to the life you planned for him. The perfect wife, the perfect family name, the perfect lie. I stood up, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. Well, you can have it all back. I quit. I walked to the closet where my regular clothes hung, the simple blue dress I'd arrived in this morning, the one Tom had called too casual for the rehearsal dinner. I started unzipping the wedding dress. Eleanor gasped. You can't change the photographers. The guests are watching your son's ex-girlfriend expose their affair on a giant screen. I finished for her. I think they'll survive my outfit. Sarah helped me out of the wedding dress, while Eleanor stood frozen by the door as the heavy fabric pulled at my feet. I felt pounds lighter. I stepped into my blue dress, comfortable and familiar me. What about the gifts? The deposits? The honeymoon? Eleanor's voice rose with each question. Do you know how much money we've spent? I pulled my hair free from its elaborate updo, letting it fall around my shoulders. Consider it the price of your son's double life. Cheaper than a divorce, isn't it? Just then, Tom burst into the room. His face was flushed tight. Ask you, baby, please. He started. Jessica's just trying to cause trouble. You know how she gets. I can explain everything. I really looked at him for the first time in months. His handsome face, his perfect suit, his practiced, sincere expression. Everything about him was a performance, and I finally saw the actor behind the role. You know what's sad, Tom? I actually can imagine your explanation. You'll say Jessica's emotional, that she's making things up. You'll tell me those photos are old, taken out of context. You'll promise it meant nothing, that you love me, that I'm being dramatic. I stepped closer to him. But here's the thing. I don't care anymore. His eyes widened. This wasn't the script he'd prepared for. What do you mean, I'm done. Done pretending I don't see the looks between you two. Done ignoring the late-night calls and mysterious business trips. Done competing with a relationship that never really ended. I picked up my purse, the small practical one. I hidden under Eleanor, approved designer clutch. I deserve better than being the understudy in my own love story. You can't just leave. He grabbed my arm. Think about what people will say. I gently removed his hand. They'll say, your ex-girlfriend crashed our wedding to expose your affair. They'll say the coffee shop girl finally got smart and walked away. They'll say whatever they want, Tom, but for once I don't care about the Davidson family reputation. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice sharp. If you walk out that door, you'll never be welcome in our circles again. I smiled, genuinely amused. Promise. Sarah handed me my car keys. She'd already packed my overnight bag, apparently having more faith in my strength than I'd had as I walked toward the door. Tom called out, one last time. Catherine, please don't be dramatic about this. I turned back, looking at the three of them. Tom, Eleanor, and now Jessica, who'd appeared in the doorway. The perfect family portrait they'd always wanted. You know what's drama I see, I said quietly, spending 7 years pretending to love someone while keeping your ex on standby planning a wedding, while planning secret trips with another woman, making someone feel crazy for seeing the truth right in front of them. I straightened my blue dress, me walking away. That's just common sense. I walked out of the bridal suite, through the lobby filled with gossiping guests, and into the warm evening air behind me. I could hear Eleanor's shrill voice organizing damage control. Tom's footsteps fading as he chased after Jessica, and the distant sound of Sarah telling everyone to go home. But ahead of me, nothing but open road impossibilities. I got into my car, kicked off the ridiculous heels Eleanor had insisted on, and started the engine in my rearview mirror. The Grand Hotel grew smaller and smaller, taking with it the weight of expectations and pretense I'd carried for so long. Sometimes the happiest ending isn't the one you planned for. Sometimes it's the one you find when you finally stop. Stop reading from someone else's script and start writing your own story.